7 clues that reveal a soul is carrying heavy past life memory. There are people walking among you who carry the weight of lifetimes in their eyes, not as belief, not as philosophy, but as burden, as memory, as something they cannot unsee, cannot unfeel, cannot unknow. They remember what they're not supposed to remember. Perhaps you are one of them. Perhaps you've felt it, that strange heaviness that has no name in this lifetime, the inexplicable sorrow that arrives on certain days for no reason, the fear that grips you when you encounter something you've never experienced before, and yet, somehow you have. The person you met for the first time who felt like coming home. The place you visited that made you weep, though you'd never been there before. What if these aren't coincidences? What if they're not the products of an overactive imagination or undiagnosed anxiety? What if they are something far more ancient, far more real? What if they are echoes? Echoes of lives you've already lived, deaths you've already died, loves you've already lost, battles you've already fought, wounds that never fully healed, not in one lifetime, not in 10. In the next hour, you're going to discover the 7 unmistakable clues that reveal when a soul is carrying heavy past life memory. These aren't subtle hints. These aren't metaphors. These are disruptions in the normal pattern of forgetting, signs that something from before is bleeding through into now, demanding to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be finally, mercifully released. Understanding these clues isn't about proving reincarnation. It's about liberation. For those carrying these memories, recognition is the first step toward freedom. For those who love them, it's the key to compassion, to understanding why someone you care about seems haunted by ghosts you cannot see, shaped by forces you cannot name. Here is the paradox at the heart of past life memory. It is not always a gift. Sometimes it is a weight, an anchor, a stone tied to the soul that prevents it from rising fully into this present moment, this present body, this present opportunity for joy. The soul that remembers too much can become trapped between worlds, unable to fully inhabit this life because it is still living in others, still grieving losses from centuries ago, still seeking revenge for betrayals long forgotten by everyone except the one who cannot forget, still searching for a home that no longer exists except in the architecture of memory. This is the burden we are about to explore together. And if you recognize yourself or someone you love in what follows, know this: you are not broken, you are not cursed, you are not being punished. You are being called to witness what your soul has been trying to show you all along. Welcome, the recognition begins now. Before we enter the territory of memory, we must first establish our map. And for that, we turn to the man who spent 43 years documenting what most of us have forgotten. His name was Edgar Cayce, and while you slept, he remembered. Edgar Cayce was a humble man, a photographer by trade, a Sunday school teacher by devotion. But when he entered a self-induced trance state, something extraordinary happened. He became a conduit, a channel, a voice speaking from somewhere beyond the ordinary boundaries of consciousness. Over the course of his lifetime, Cayce gave more than 14,000 trance readings, and in thousands of those readings, he described something remarkable: the past lives of the people who came to him seeking healing, seeking understanding, seeking answers to questions that had no explanation in their current biography. He didn't speak in generalities. He spoke in specifics. Names, dates, places, roles, relationships. A woman who suffered unexplained throat pain. He saw her strangled in a past life during the French Revolution. A man paralyzed by fear of water. Cayce described his drowning in a shipwreck off the coast of ancient Atlantis. A child prodigy who could play piano without lessons. The soul had been a court musician in 18th century Vienna. Details that could sometimes be verified. Details that the conscious mind of the person had never encountered. This wasn't philosophy. This was archaeology of the soul. And what Cayce discovered again and again was this: most souls incarnate with what he called a veil of forgetting. The memories are there, stored in the vast library of the subconscious, written in the Akashic Records that hold every thought, every action, every lifetime ever lived. But the conscious mind doesn't access them. The veil protects you. It allows you to be fully present in this life, unencumbered by the weight of all the others. But some souls have thin veils, or no veil at all. For these souls, the past doesn't stay in the past. It bleeds through. It intrudes. It manifests as vivid memories, as inexplicable knowledge, as psychological symptoms that have no origin in this lifetime, as physical pain that doctors cannot diagnose or cure. Why does this happen? Cayce offered several explanations. Sometimes the trauma was too intense to process in a single lifetime. The soul carries it forward seeking resolution. Sometimes there are soul contracts that require continuity of memory, agreements made before birth to complete work begun in another era. And sometimes the soul is simply advanced, evolved enough to retain awareness across the boundary of death and rebirth, choosing to remember in order to serve, to teach, to heal. But regardless of the why, the effect is the same. The person carrying heavy past life memory lives in two worlds at once: the present and the past, and the friction between them creates suffering. The 7 clues we're about to explore are not metaphors. They are diagnostic markers, evidence that past life content is active, unintegrated, and demanding attention. Cayce's framework aligns with ancient wisdom traditions. Tibetan Buddhism has recognized reincarnated masters, tulkus, for centuries, identifying children who remember their previous lives with remarkable accuracy. Hindu philosophy speaks of samskaras, the deep impressions left on the soul by past actions and experiences. And in modern times, researchers like Dr. Ian Stevenson spent decades documenting cases of young children who remember past lives with verifiable details, names of deceased individuals they'd never heard of, descriptions of homes in distant villages they'd never visited, knowledge of events they could not possibly know. The evidence is there. The question is, do you recognize it in yourself? Even if you approach this material as metaphor, as symbolic language for deep psychological content, what follows has value. These patterns reveal truths about the human soul that transcend any single belief system. So let us proceed with open minds and compassionate hearts. The first clue appears not as memory, but as knowing, knowledge you have no earthly reason to possess. Let us reframe what we mean when we speak of past life memory. This is not romantic. This is not the stuff of past life regression seminars where everyone discovers they were Cleopatra or King Arthur. That is fantasy. That is the ego seeking importance. What we are speaking of here is something far more visceral, far more painful, far more real. A heavy past life memory is intrusive. It is unwanted. It is disruptive. It is, in many ways, like post-traumatic stress disorder, except the trauma didn't happen in this lifetime. It happened before, perhaps centuries before, and yet the body remembers, the psyche remembers, the soul remembers. And it hurts. Here is the core mystery we must hold as we move forward. Why do some souls carry conscious memories while others do not? And more importantly, why do these memories cause suffering? Edgar Cayce's explanation, simplified, goes like this. The soul stores all experiences in what he called the Akashic Records, a kind of universal memory bank, an energetic library where every thought, every action, every emotion from every lifetime is preserved. Normally, the subconscious mind filters this vast archive. You access what you need through dreams, through intuition, through moments of déjà vu. Small sips of memory, carefully measured, integrated gently into your present awareness. But when trauma is unresolved, when lessons are incomplete, when death was sudden or violent or unjust, the memory doesn't integrate properly. It becomes what we might call a soul wound. An energetic imprint that doesn't heal with the passage of time. It doesn't fade. It doesn't close. It blades across lifetimes, seeking resolution, seeking completion, seeking the healing that was never given in the life where the wound was made. And until that healing happens, the soul carries it, life after life after life. The 7 clues we are about to explore are the ways this soul wound manifests. They are how the unintegrated past makes itself known in the present. Each clue reveals a different channel through which memory flows: psychological, physical, relational, spiritual. Think of it this way: heavy past life memory is like carrying luggage from a trip you don't remember taking. You feel the weight, your shoulders ache, your arms tire, but you don't know what's inside the suitcase or why you're holding it or when you'll be allowed to set it down. That is the burden. And the invitation, the sacred invitation, is this: to finally open the luggage, to look inside, to see what you've been carrying all this time, not to be afraid of it, but to witness it, to acknowledge it, to honor it. And then, at last, to release it. Recognition is the first step. Understanding is the second. Integration is the third. And release is the gift waiting on the other side of this work. So if you recognize yourself in what follows, or if you recognize someone you love, know that you are being called to witness. The soul has been trying to show you some thing it has been whispering or perhaps screaming across the years. It is time to listen. The first clue lives in your mind, knowledge that arrived without learning. There are people who simply know things, not because they studied, not because they were taught, not because they read about it in a book or learned it in a classroom. They know because they remember. This is the first clue, and it is one of the most startling. Imagine this: you're 8 years old, and you sit down at a piano for the first time. Your fingers find the keys as though they've always known where to go. You play a melody, complex, haunting, beautiful, and when your mother asks where you learned it, you cannot say. You didn't learn it. It was already inside you. Or perhaps you're walking through a museum, standing before an exhibit on ancient Egypt, and you find yourself correcting the placard. No, you say quietly to yourself, that's not how the ritual was performed. The priest would have faced east, not west. The incense was frankincense, not myrrh. And you are certain, not guessing, certain. How do you know this? You were never an Egyptologist. You never studied ancient religious practices. And yet the knowledge is there, as clear and precise as if you had stood in that temple yourself, performing that very ritual 2,000 years ago. This is inexplicable expertise, and it is different from natural talent. Talent means you're good at something with practice. You have aptitude, you learn quickly. But past life memory means you already know it, deeply, specifically, before any practice at all. The knowledge feels like remembering, not learning. Edgar Cayce encountered this phenomenon countless times in his readings. Individuals who could describe the layout of ancient cities that no longer existed. People who spoke with authority about medical practices from centuries past, remedies that modern research later confirmed as effective. Children who could read hieroglyphics without ever being taught, who could navigate complex mathematical systems without instruction. In one case, a woman came to Cayce suffering from severe anxiety. In her reading, he described a past life in which she had been a temple priestess in ancient Greece. She had been responsible for maintaining the sacred flame, a duty that required constant vigilance. If the flame went out, it was believed the gods would abandon the city. The woman had no conscious memory of this life, but when Cayce described it, something inside her recognized the truth of it, and suddenly her present life anxiety made sense. The hypervigilance, the terror of making a mistake, the feeling that catastrophe was always one misstep away. She wasn't anxious for no reason. She was anxious because she remembered what it felt like to carry the weight of an entire city's spiritual safety on her shoulders. The knowledge we carry from past lives can take many forms. Sometimes it's historical, an obsessive, detailed knowledge of a specific era, medieval Europe, ancient Greece, Edo, Japan. You know not just the broad strokes, but the intimate details, the way people spoke, the food they ate, the rituals they performed, the clothes they wore. You know these things with a certainty that goes beyond academic interest. Sometimes it's linguistic. You feel a profound connection to a specific language family. You hear Sanskrit and something in your chest opens. You see Chinese characters and you feel you should be able to read them, even though you never learned. Words from other tongues sit on your tongue as though they belong there. Sometimes it's practical skill. You know how to forge metal, though you've never worked a forge. You know how to navigate by stars, though no one ever taught you. You know how to prepare herbal remedies with precision, as though you've done it 10,000 times before. And sometimes it's geographic. You describe the layout of a city you've never visited. You know where streets should be, and when you finally travel there, you discover that you were right. Or perhaps the streets have changed, but the old maps confirm. Once, long ago, the city was exactly as you described it. This knowing comes with a particular emotional signature. When you encounter this knowledge, it doesn't feel new. It feels like coming home. And often, it's accompanied by deep nostalgia or grief. You miss this, even though you've never had it in this life. You long for a time and place that no longer exists. You ache for skills you can no longer use, for a world that has vanished, for a version of yourself that lived centuries ago, and new things that this modern self can only dimly recall. This is the burden of inexplicable knowledge. You feel isolated, because how do you explain to others that you simply know how ancient temple rituals were performed? How do you tell someone that you understand the political dynamics of a royal court from 500 years ago, not because you read about it, but because you lived it? They will think you're strange, or delusional, or pretentious. And so you learn to be quiet about what you know. You learn to hide the knowledge, to downplay it, to pretend you're just unusually interested in history or culture or music. But inside, you know the truth. You're not interested, you're remembering. And that remembering carries with it a profound frustration. Why do I know this if I cannot use it? Why do I carry this skill, this wisdom, this expertise, if there is no place for it in this modern world? Edgar Cayce's guidance on this was clear. The knowledge isn't random, it's curriculum. The soul doesn't retain memory without purpose. If you remember how to heal with herbs, perhaps you're meant to study herbalism in this life, to bridge the ancient wisdom with modern application. If you remember the art of storytelling from a time when oral tradition was sacred, perhaps you're meant to write, to teach, to preserve stories now. The question to ask is not, why do I know this? The question is, how am I meant to use what I remember in service to this lifetime? Because that is where the healing begins, when memory becomes medicine, when the knowledge you carry is no longer a burden, but a gift you can offer to the world. But knowledge is not the only way memory surfaces. Sometimes it arrives not as thought, but as language, words you speak but never learned. There is a phenomenon documented across cultures and centuries, a phenomenon so strange that it has its own name, xenoglossy, or the speaking of languages never learned. And it is one of the most undeniable clues that a soul is carrying memory from another life. Imagine waking from a dream where you were speaking fluently in a language you don't know. French, German, ancient Aramaic. You remember the dream vividly, the conversation, the emotion, the fluency. And when you wake, fragments of those words remain on your tongue, foreign and yet somehow familiar. You write them down phonetically, clumsily. Later you search for them and you discover they are real words, real sentences from a language you have never studied. How is this possible? Or perhaps it happens while you're awake. You're tired or emotional or deeply relaxed, and suddenly your accent shifts. You're speaking English, your native tongue, but with inflections that don't belong to you, a lilt, a cadence, a rhythm from another language, another region, another time. People notice, you sound different, they say, where's that accent from? And you don't know, because it's not from anywhere in this life. Or perhaps you hear someone speaking a foreign language, one you've never studied, and you understand them, not perfectly, not every word, but enough. You know what they're saying, you feel the meaning. And when you try to explain this to others, they look at you as though you've lost your mind. But you haven't. Your soul is speaking, and it remembers languages that this body, this brain, this lifetime never learned. Edgar Cayce himself experienced this. In trance, he would sometimes speak in languages he had never studied, Greek, Latin, ancient Egyptian dialects. Scholars verified the accuracy of what he said. This was not gibberish. This was real linguistic knowledge emerging from some deep well of memory that transcended his conscious education. And in his readings for others, he described countless souls who carried linguistic imprints from past lives. Scholars who had been translators in ancient libraries, diplomats who had navigated the courts of multiple kingdoms, speaking a dozen tongues, priests and priestesses who chanted in sacred languages now long dead. When the veil between lives is thin, these linguistic patterns resurface. Because language is not just a skill, it is woven into identity. It is how you thought in that life, how you dreamed, how you prayed, how you loved. And when the soul remembers, It remembers in the language it once spoke. Well, there are different ways this manifests. Sometimes it happens in dreams. You find yourself in another time, another place, speaking fluently in a tongue you do not consciously know. The dream has a quality of memory, not fantasy. It feels real, lived. And when you wake, the words linger, sometimes whole phrases, sometimes just the emotional texture of having once been fluent in something you can no longer access. Sometimes it's an accent shift. Your usual way of speaking suddenly changes, especially when you're emotional, tired, or in an altered state. Perhaps you're meditating, and when you speak afterward, your voice carries inflections from elsewhere. Or you're grieving, and the sorrow pulls out a vocal pattern that doesn't belong to your current geography or upbringing. Sometimes it's spontaneous understanding. You're traveling, and you hear people speaking in a language you've never studied. And somehow, impossibly, you understand them, not word for word, but the essence, the meaning, as though something you recognizes the shape and sound of words you once knew intimately. And sometimes, in deep meditative or trance states, there is automatic writing or speaking. Your hand moves across the page, forming letters in scripts you've never learned. Or your mouth opens and words emerge that you don't consciously understand, but they have rhythm, grammar, meaning. Later, when researched, they turn out to be fragments of real languages, dead languages, languages that your current self has no business knowing. The research on this is remarkable. Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist who spent decades studying reincarnation, documented numerous cases of children who spoke fluently in languages they had never been exposed to. One child in India, claiming to remember a past life in a distant village, spoke the regional dialect of that village, a dialect his current family had never used. When researchers took him to the village, he navigated it perfectly, recognized people by name, and spoke to them in their dialect as though he had always lived there. These are not imaginary cases. These are documented, verified, witnessed. And they point to something profound. The soul retains what it needs. And sometimes what it needs is the language of another life. But why does this happen? Cayce taught that language is deeply embedded in soul memory. If you spent a lifetime as a scribe, copying manuscripts in Latin, that linguistic pattern doesn't simply vanish when you die. It's written into the energetic blueprint of your soul. And when you incarnate again, especially if the veil is thin, that old pattern can resurface. The emotional weight of this clue is significant. Imagine feeling that your native tongue, the language you think in, dream in, long for, is one you cannot speak fluently now. There is a grief in that, a loss. You feel severed from a part of yourself. Or imagine the isolation of understanding a language no one around you speaks, of feeling like the words you long to say exist in a vocabulary that this lifetime doesn't offer you. For those who carry this clue, there is often a deep longing, a sense that if you could just remember the words, if you could just speak the language fully again, something essential would click back into place. Cayce's guidance for integration is simple. Study the language consciously. If you feel drawn to a particular language, if fragments of it surface in dreams or meditation, don't dismiss it. Learn it formally. Often, the learning accelerates dramatically, not because you're a natural linguist, but because you're not learning, you're remembering. And as you remember, the memory integrates. It stops being a haunting and becomes a skill, a bridge, a way to honor what you once knew and to bring it forward into useful expression now. Words carry memory, but so does the body. And sometimes, the body's memory is far more visceral than words could ever be. The body remembers what the mind forgets. This is not metaphor. This is physiology, somatic memory, the way trauma imprints itself not just in thought, but in tissue, in nerve, in bone. And when that trauma happened in another lifetime, the imprint can carry forward. Birthmarks in the exact location of fatal wounds, chronic pain that has no medical explanation, physical weaknesses or limitations that doctors cannot diagnose. This is the third clue, and for many, it is the most undeniable. Edgar Cayce spoke extensively about the etheric body, the energetic blueprint that underlies physical form. According to his framework, this etheric body carries imprints from all incarnations, and when the trauma is severe, especially deaths that were violent, sudden, or deeply painful, the imprint runs deep. Deep enough that when the soul reincarnates, the etheric imprint manifests physically. This is not punishment. This is not karma in the sense of retribution. This is the body trying to complete what was never processed. The body remembering, the body asking to be witnessed, to be healed. Dr. Ian Stevenson, in his meticulous research on children who remember past lives, documented hundreds of cases where birthmarks and birth defects corresponded precisely to wounds described in the child's past life memories. One child, born with a large birthmark on his chest, remembered being shot in that exact location in a previous life. When researchers investigated, they found records of a man who had died from a gunshot wound to the chest in the village the child described, a man the child had never heard of in his current life. Another child, born with malformed fingers on one hand, remembered a past life where those fingers had been severed in an accident. Again, records confirmed the existence of such a person, with such an injury, in the location the child described. These are not isolated incidents. Stevenson documented case after case, photographs, medical records, witness testimonies. The evidence is staggering. And Cayce's readings echo this pattern. He described individuals with unexplained marks on their throats, strangulation or beheading in past lives, marks on their chests, wounds from spears or swords or bullets, marks on their heads, blunt force trauma, executions, accidents. The body carries the map of its own history, even across lifetimes. But birthmarks are not the only way this manifests. Sometimes it's chronic pain, pain that appears in specific regions of the body despite clean diagnostics, despite MRIs and X-rays and specialists who can find nothing physically wrong. Lower back pain that traces to a past life spear wound, joint pain that echoes torture or prolonged imprisonment in chains, respiratory issues that stem from drowning or smoke inhalation, or chest wounds that punctured lungs. The pain is real. It is not all in your head, but its origin is not in this body's biography. Sometimes it's physical limitations or weaknesses, weak ankles that have been fragile since birth, perhaps from a past life where you were shackled or where you fell from a great height. Vision or hearing impairments that have no genetic or medical cause, perhaps from a past life where you were blinded or deafened as punishment or injury. And sometimes it's aversions to specific sensations. You cannot bear anything around your neck. Even a loose scarf makes you feel like you're suffocating. Why? Because in another life you were hanged or strangled or beheaded. You panic when your hands are restrained, even playfully, even gently, because in another life you were bound, imprisoned, tortured. You cannot tolerate the smell of smoke. It sends you into immediate panic, because in another life you burned. The body knows. Even when the mind has forgotten, the body knows. And this knowledge is often most clear in young children, before the conscious veil thickens. Children will point to birthmarks and say things that chill their parents. This is where the bad man shot me. This is where the horse kicked me and I died. I had a big OE here before I was born. As they grow older, the conscious memory fades. The stories stop, but the somatic imprint remains. How do you identify past life somatic memory? Look for these markers. The pain or mark has been present since birth or early childhood. Medical interventions provide limited or no relief. The pain intensifies during emotional stress or when engaging with content that relates to the suspected past life. And sometimes, during regression therapy or deep meditation, vivid imagery arises, imagery of injury in that exact location. Cayce's approach to healing this was multifaceted. First, always address the physical symptoms medically, rule out current life causes, do the diagnostics, try the treatments, honor the body's present needs. But simultaneously, engage in energy work, past life regression, forgiveness rituals, somatic therapies that help the body release held trauma. Because often, once the memory is acknowledged, once the soul is seen in its wound, the body can let go. It doesn't always happen immediately. Sometimes the pain persists, but even when it does, there is a shift. The pain means something now. It's no longer random suffering. It's a message, a messenger. a wound that came forward so it could finally be healed. For many people, discovering this connection brings profound relief. I'm not crazy. There is a reason. This pain has a source. And that validation, that recognition, is the beginning of healing. But the burden of somatic past life memory is real. Living with pain that others dismiss because it's not real, when it is real, just not from this life, is a lonely, exhausting experience. You go to doctors, they run tests, they find nothing. They prescribe pain medication, physical therapy, surgeries. Some of it helps, some of it doesn't. And underneath it all is the quiet knowing, this isn't from now, this is from before. But how do you say that to a physician? How do you explain? Most of the time, you don't. You suffer in silence. You learn to manage. You carry the pain as just another weight the soul has to bear. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you recognize this in yourself, chronic pain with no clear origin, marks that have always been there, physical limitations that don't make sense, consider the possibility. Gently, without forcing, just consider it. And if it resonates, seek support, regression therapy, energy healing, somatic practitioners who understand trauma that transcends time. And because your body is not betraying you, it's trying to speak to you. It's trying to show you what needs to be seen, so it can finally be released. The body whispers what the mind forgot. But sometimes the soul screams through phobias. Fear is a useful thing. It keeps us alive. It warns us of danger. It's the body's alarm system, finely tuned over millennia of evolution. But what happens when the fear is disproportionate? When it's so intense it controls your life, and yet there is no event in this lifetime to explain it. What happens when you're terrified of water, but you've never drowned? When you panic at the sight of fire, but you've never been burned? When enclosed spaces make you feel like you're dying, but you've never been trapped? This is the fourth clue. Phobias so primal, so overwhelming, that they feel like life and death, even when you are perfectly safe. These are not ordinary fears. These are soul memories. Let me be clear about the difference. A normal fear is a proportional response to real danger. You're afraid of heights because falling could kill you. You're cautious around fire because burns are painful. These are adaptive, rational fears. But a past life phobia is different. It is disproportionate. It is primal. It is visceral in a way that bypasses all logic. You know intellectually that you are safe, but your body doesn't believe it. Your heart races, your breath shortens, panic floods your system, and underneath the panic is a terrible certainty: this will kill me. Because once it did. Edgar Cayce's readings are filled with examples of this. People who came to him with debilitating phobias, and in trance, he would trace those fears back to traumatic deaths in previous incarnations. A woman terrified of deep water. In her reading, Cayce saw her drowning in a shipwreck. The water was dark. She couldn't see the bottom. She went under, gasping, and her lungs filled with salt water as the cold swallowed her. She didn't consciously remember this, but her body did, her soul did. And now, in this life, even standing near the edge of a pool where she could see the bottom made her feel safe. But a lake, the ocean, anywhere the water was deep and she couldn't see what lay beneath, absolute terror. That specificity is the clue. If your phobia is oddly specific, I'm only afraid of water if I can't see the bottom, it often indicates precise past life memory. The details matter. They're breadcrumbs leading back to the source. Another common pattern, fire phobia. Terror of flames, even small ones. The smell of smoke triggering panic attacks. An overwhelming need to escape any room where fire is burning, even a controlled fire in a fireplace. Why? Because in another life you burned, perhaps at the stake, perhaps in a house fire, perhaps in warfare, trapped in a burning building with no way out. The soul remembers the heat, the smoke filling your lungs, the knowledge that there is no escape, the agony of flesh burning. And now, even the scent of a candle can pull that memory forward. Heights, the fear of falling. Perhaps in a past life, you were thrown from a great height as execution, or you fell from a cliff, from a tower, from a mountain. The moment of falling, that terrible, helpless moment where gravity takes you and there is nothing you can do, is seared into the soul's memory. And now, even standing on a balcony makes your legs weak, your vision blur, your entire being scream, get away from the edge. Enclosed spaces, claustrophobia. Perhaps you were buried alive. Perhaps you were imprisoned in a dungeon, in a cage, in a cell so small you couldn't stand. Perhaps you died slowly, in darkness, in confinement, with no hope of escape. The soul remembers. And now, elevators, small rooms, tight spaces, they all trigger that ancient primal terror. And then there are fears that are not about physical danger, but about relational harm. The fear of betrayal, the terror of abandonment. You meet someone new, and immediately, without reason, you're certain they will betray you. You cannot trust. You cannot let anyone close. Because somewhere, deep in the memory of the soul, you were betrayed in a way so devastating that you died from it. Perhaps you were sold into slavery by someone you loved. Perhaps you were exiled by your family, left to die alone. Perhaps you were betrayed by an ally in battle, and their betrayal led directly to your deaths. The soul's alarm system is now hypervigilant. It will not let you trust again, because trusting once cost you everything. These phobias are not irrational, they are transrational. Your soul is protecting you from something that did kill you once. And until you acknowledge the source, the alarm will keep sounding. Healing through recognition is possible. Regression therapy allows you to witness the original trauma in a safe, guided context. You see the death, you feel the fear, but this time you survive the memory. You witness it from a place of safety, with support, with the knowledge that it is over. And in that witnessing, something shifts. The fear doesn't always disappear completely, but it loses its grip. You can reframe, that happened, it was real, but it's over, I survived, my soul survived, and I am safe now. Gradual exposure therapy combined with spiritual acknowledgement can also help, but treating the symptom without addressing the source often fails. You can desensitize yourself to water, to heights, to fire, but if the soul-level terror is never acknowledged, it will find other ways to manifest. Cayce's insight was profound. Phobias are the soul's alarm system, not to torture you, but to ensure you don't repeat the same deaths. But once you acknowledge the memory, once you honor it, the alarm can quiet. You don't need to be afraid anymore. You've already died that death. You don't need to die it again. Fear reveals where you died. But sometimes memory reveals where you live and who you loved there. There are places on this earth that hold memory, not just in stone and soil, but in the energetic fabric of space itself. And when you encounter them, sometimes for the first time, sometimes after years of longing, the soul responds. Sometimes with joy, sometimes with grief, sometimes with terror. This is the sixth clue. Visceral reactions to specific locations or historical eras. Reactions that go far beyond intellectual interest. You visit a country you've never been to, and the moment you step off the plane, you feel it. I'm home. You walk through streets you've never walked, and yet you know them. You know where the alley should turn. You know what building used to stand on that corner, even though it's gone now. The local language flows more easily than it should. Words come to you without translation, as though your tongue remembers shaping them. And sometimes you weep, for no reason you can name, just overwhelming emotion, relief, sorrow, homecoming. Or perhaps the opposite. There's a place you refuse to visit, no logical reason, you've never been there, you've never had a bad experience there, but the thought of going fills you with dread. And if you're forced to go for work, for family, you become physically ill. Nausea, headaches, an overwhelming urge to leave. Because that place holds a memory your soul cannot forget. Edgar Cayce spoke of this often. Souls reincarnate in the same regions across multiple lives. There are karmic ties to land, to geography, to specific places where significant events occurred. Battles, ceremonies, deaths. These events imprint on both the land and the soul. And when you return, even centuries later, the imprint activates. Sometimes it's healing. You visit ancient ruins and feel a download of memory, visions, knowings, pieces of who you were clicking into place. Sometimes it's overwhelming. The memories flood too fast, too intense. You need to leave, to ground, to process. And sometimes it's obsession with a specific historical era. This is different from casual interest. This is consuming. You devour everything about that period: art, music, literature, daily life, architecture, politics, religion. You know details that aren't in popular history books. You feel the era intimately as though you lived it. Because you did. You feel born in the wrong time. You long for that era with a grief that feels personal, as though you lost it, as though it was taken from you. How do you identify past life geographic memory versus imagination? The emotion is somatic, felt in the body, not just mentally interesting. Chills, nausea, euphoria, weeping. The details you know aren't in common historical knowledge. Later, when you research, you discover they're accurate in ways you couldn't have known unless you'd been there. You have dreams set consistently in that location, that time period. The dreams have continuity, storylines, characters, a sense of lived experience. Cayce's readings included countless examples. Souls who had lived in ancient Egypt, obsessed with pyramids and hieroglyphs and specific deities, not academic interest, lived memory. Souls who died in World War I trenches, experiencing visceral reactions when visiting battlefields, unable to breathe, panic attacks, visions of mud and blood and barbed wire. Souls from Native American lives drawn to specific sacred lands. When they visited, they experienced visions, memories, a deep sense of belonging that this modern life had never given them. If you're drawn to a place, consider visiting if possible. Often it brings integration, closure. While you're there, meditate, journal, allow memories to surface without forcing them. Speak to the land, thank it, honor what happened there. If you're averse to a place, you may need to forgive that geography energetically. Release the trauma tied to it before you can visit in peace, if visiting is even necessary. Sometimes the healing happens from a distance. But the burden of geographic soul memory is real. You long for a home that no longer exists, or exists in such altered form that it's unrecognizable. You grieve for a time you cannot return to, for a place that lives only in memory. And that grief is not abstract. It's visceral. It's personal. It's the ache of exile from a homeland that no longer exists anywhere but in the architecture of your soul. Places hold memory. But the deepest clue doesn't come from outside. It comes from within, in dreams that feel more real than waking life. Every night you close your eyes, and every night you return to the same place, the same time, the same people. A life that isn't this one. This is the seventh clue, and for many, it's the most undeniable. Recurring dreams of other lives, dreams that repeat across years, same settings, same characters, same narrative arc, but set in times and places that are not your current life. These are not ordinary dreams. They have consistency. The same location appears again and again, the same historical era, the same people playing out the same dynamics. They have continuity. The dreams have ongoing storylines as though you're living another life in fragments each night. Events build on each other. Relationships develop. There's a progression. They have sensory richness beyond normal dreams. You can smell the earth, taste the food, feel the texture of fabric against your skin, the temperature of the air. The emotional intensity lingers. You wake with feelings that stay with you for hours, sometimes days. Grief, joy, terror, longing. And sometimes the historical accuracy is uncanny. When you research the details later, the clothing, the architecture, the customs, they align with actual history, history you've never studied. Edgar Cayce taught that during sleep, the conscious mind rests, but the soul becomes active. The soul can access the Akashic Records. It can review past lives, process karma, prepare for lessons yet to come. Recurring dreams are the soul's attempt to show the conscious mind what needs attention. There are different types of past life dreams. Traumatic death replays are perhaps the most common and the most disturbing. You die the same death repeatedly, drowning, falling, violence. You wake at the moment of death, often with physical sensations. You can't breathe. There's pain in specific parts of your body. Your heart races as though you're still dying. These dreams are unresolved death traumas seeking integration. The soul is saying, "This happened, it was terrible, it was unfair, it was violent, and it's still unprocessed." And so, night after night, you relive it, hoping that this time you'll survive it, this time you'll escape. But you don't, because it's memory, not prophecy. Then there are mundane life scenes. Not dramatic, just daily life in another era. You're walking through a market in medieval times. You're cooking in an ancient kitchen. You're tending animals on a farm. The ordinariness is the clue. Fantasy dreams are dramatic, epic, full of magic and adventure. But memory dreams are often normal, everyday routines. Because that's what life was, ordinary moments in an extraordinary context. Then there are unfinished business dreams. You're searching for someone you can't find. You're trying to complete a task but keep failing. You're trying to deliver a message but no one will listen. There's urgency, a sense that you must finish this, but you wake before you can. These dreams often indicate soul contracts or vows that need completion or release. Perhaps you made a promise in that life, and your soul is still trying to keep it. Or perhaps you left something undone, unsaid, unforgiven. And your soul returns, night after night, trying to finish what was interrupted by deaths. And then there are relationship dreams. Recurring dreams featuring the same person, often someone you know in your current life, but in a different role. In this life, they're your friend. In the dream, they're your lover. In this life, they're your sibling. In the dream, they're your enemy. The dynamics play out in historical contexts, different eras, different names, but the same souls working through the same patterns. Cayce's guidance on working with these dreams is practical. Keep a detailed dream journal. Record immediately upon waking. Note the era, the location, the clothing, the language, the emotions, the people, the outcomes. Track patterns over months. You'll start to see consistency, themes, repeated locations, the same characters appearing in different scenarios. Research the details. If you dream of specific architecture, clothing styles, customs, research them. Historical accuracy can validate that these are memories, not fantasies. If you dream of a castle with a particular design, and later you discover that castles of that design existed only in a specific region during a specific century, that's validation. Engage the dream consciously. Before sleep, ask, "Show me more, help me understand." Lucid dreaming techniques can allow you to complete the narrative, to find resolution, to ask questions within the dream itself. And if the dreams are overwhelming, seek professional guidance. Past life regression therapists can help you access the full memory in a waking state. Integration work ensures the memory doesn't remain a haunting dream, but becomes integrated wisdom. Often, when you finally acknowledge the dream as memory, when you stop dismissing it as just a dream, something shifts. Either the dream completes, it reaches resolution, and then it stops, it never returns. Or it transforms, it becomes less traumatic, more informative. The fear lifts, and what remains is simply information. But the burden of dream memory is real. You wake exhausted because you've been living another life each night. You haven't rested. You've been working, processing, experiencing. You feel confusion about which memories are real, this life or the dream life. Sometimes the dream feels more vivid, more meaningful than your waking hours. You feel split between identities. Who am I? The person I am during the day or the person I become each night? And there are relationship complications. Perhaps you're in love with someone in your dreams, someone who isn't in your current life, and you wake aching for them, grieving a relationship that exists only in memory. Or worse, the person is in your current life, but in a different role. In dreams, they're your lover. In waking life, they're your co-worker, your friend, someone unavailable. How do you reconcile that? Cayce's reassurance is gentle. Dreams are the soul's kindness. It's trying to heal you, but it's doing it in sleep, where the conscious mind is less defended, where the memories can surface without triggering the ego's resistance. The soul is trying to help, even when it hurts. Now you know the 7 clues. But what do you do when you recognize yourself in them? You've recognized the clues. Perhaps you've seen yourself in one, perhaps in all 7. And now you know you are carrying heavy past life memories. So what do you do with that knowledge? This is where the sacred work begins. First, hear this: you are not broken. You are not cursed. You are not being punished by karma or fate or an angry God. You are remembering. And the veil thinned for a reason, usually because you are ready, finally ready, to heal what you've been carrying. The work of integration is not about getting rid of the memories. It's about bringing them into right relationship with your present life. So they inform you, but don't imprison you. So they teach you, but don't torment you. Here is a step-by-step process. First, witness without judgment. Allow the memories to surface. Don't label them as good or bad, real or imagined. Just witness. Journal, write, "This is what I'm experiencing. These are the patterns I notice." Therapy can create a safe container for this witnessing, especially past life regression therapy or trauma-informed therapy that doesn't dismiss the spiritual dimension. Second, research for validation. If you have specific details, names, places, dates, research them. Validation isn't required for healing, but it can help the conscious mind accept what the soul already knows. Be prepared. Sometimes research confirms, sometimes it doesn't. Memory can be symbolic, not literal. The emotional truth may be accurate even if the historical details are not. Third, identify the lesson or pattern. Ask, what is this memory teaching me? Common themes emerge: betrayal teaching you about trust, abuse of power teaching you about humility, being silenced teaching you about voice. Often, the pattern in the past mirrors a challenge in your present life. And when you complete the lesson now, you heal both timelines. Fourth, forgiveness work. Forgive those who harmed you in past lives. This doesn't mean condoning what they did. It means releasing the energetic charge. They were playing roles in your soul's curriculum, painful roles, but necessary ones. And forgive yourself for harm you may have caused, for mistakes, for failures. Cayce was clear: forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. You don't have to find the person. You don't have to speak to them. It's energetic release. It's letting go. Fifth, somatic healing. For physical symptoms, birthmarks, chronic pain, engage in energy work. Reiki, acupuncture, somatic therapy, body work. Speak to your body. I release what is not of this lifetime. I am safe now. The body often releases symptoms once the emotional memory is acknowledged. A sixth, ritual completion. And create rituals to close the past life. Write letters to people from that life, expressing everything you never got to say, and then burn them. Visit relevant locations, if possible, and perform small ceremonies of release. Create art that expresses the memory, painting, writing, music. Externalizing it creates distance. These symbolic acts tell the subconscious, this is complete, I honor it, I release it. And then, daily practices for memory carriers. Each morning, ground yourself. I am your current name. I live in current year. I am safe in this body, in this life. Create a boundary meditation. Visualize a veil between past and present. You can access past wisdom when you choose, but it doesn't overwhelm your present awareness. And finally, orient towards service. Use what you remember in service to this life. Ancient healing knowledge, study herbalism, energy work, bring that wisdom forward. Pastel, Ife languages, become a translator, a linguist, honor the gift. Whatever you remember, ask, how can this serve now? When professional help is needed. If memories are intrusive, debilitating, or causing current life dysfunction, seek help. If you're experiencing dissociation or identity confusion, seek help. If memories include violence you might act on, rare, but if it happens, seek immediate support. You don't have to do this alone, and you shouldn't. The challenge is this: how do you honor past life memory without being trapped by it? How do you be fully present in this life while acknowledging others? This is the art of living between worlds. And the first principle is sovereignty. A past lives in form, they do not determine. You are not obligated to repeat old patterns, to stay in old relationships, to complete old vows that no longer serve. Soul contracts can be renegotiated, even those made lifetimes ago. You can say, I release this vow, I release this obligation. It served once, it does not serve now. And the universe will honor that. Now reframe the burden as gift. What do memory carriers offer the world? Old soul wisdom. You've lived through things others only read about. That perspective is valuable. Empathy. You understand suffering across time, cultures, identities. Your compassion runs deep. A pattern recognition. You see cycles, personal, cultural, historical, that others miss. And healing capacity. Your own integration journey equips you to guide others. You are not just carrying weight, you are carrying light. To create a sustainable practice. First, schedule integration time. Dedicate specific time to past life work, meditation, journaling, research. But also dedicate time to current life fully. Work, relationships, joy, play. Don't let past consume present. Second, find community. Don't carry this alone. Online forums, spiritual groups, regression therapy circles, others who understand. Isolation intensifies the burden. Shared witnessing lightens it. Third, use artistic expression. Paint the memories, write them, compose music from them. Externalizing them creates distance. You're expressing memory, not being it. Fourth, orient towards service through memory. Teach what you remember if it's relevant. Ancient wisdom, healing modalities, languages. Frame it as soul knowledge rather than claiming specific identities. That avoids the ego trap. And speaking of ego traps, beware of claiming grandiose past life identities. Cleopatra, Napoleon, Jesus, Mary Magdalene. Cayce warned, most souls lived ordinary lives. Claiming fame is usually fantasy, not memory. Authentic memory is humbling, not aggrandizing. It's about the lesson, not the identity. The ultimate integration is this. You are not your past lives. You are the soul learning through them. Each lifetime is a chapter. You are the author experiencing the story. Heavy memory means you're reading the book while still writing it. It's complex, but it's also profound. You've learned to carry the weight. But what about those who love someone carrying it? You've always felt different. Too old for your age. Too weary for your years. Like you're carrying weight others can't see. You are, and it's real. You're not crazy. You're not delusional. You're not attention-seeking. What you're experiencing has been documented across cultures, centuries, research. Cayce's readings, Stevenson's research, countless accounts confirm some souls remember. You are part of a lineage of memory carriers. The loneliness of remembering is real. Most people don't understand. Even those who believe in reincarnation may not grasp the weight. You've likely learned to hide it, minimize it, doubt it yourself. This isolation is one of the heaviest parts. But why you? Why now? Your soul is ready to integrate what previous incarnations couldn't process. This lifetime is the healing lifetime, the one where all the threads come together. The memory isn't burden without purpose, it's curriculum. You're being asked to complete what you started, release what you carried, free yourself. You have permission to set it down. You don't have to carry this alone. You don't have to figure it all out. Integration is gradual. Be patient with yourself. Some memories may never fully clarify, and that's okay. The goal isn't perfect recall, it's peace. Your sovereignty matters. Past lives don't control you. You can honor the memory and choose differently now. You can release vows, contracts, patterns that no longer serve. You are the author of your current life, informed by the past, not imprisoned by it. The community is waiting. You're not as alone as you think. Online forums, regression therapy groups, spiritual communities. Others have walked this path, others walk it now. Reach out, witnessing and being witnessed is healing. Your memory is a gift, even when it's heavy. You see what others don't, understand what others can't. The world needs old souls who remember, compassion, wisdom, perspective. And carry it with grace, but also set it down when you need to rest. If these clues resonated, you're part of a community. Share this with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Comment below which clue struck you most, or share your own experience. This is a safe space for memory carriers. This week, choose one clue that resonated. Journal on it. Ask yourself, what specific memory or feeling does this clue bring up? What might my soul be trying to teach me through this? What would integration look like for this particular memory? You don't have to solve it, just witness it. Acknowledgement is the first step. And now, a benediction to those who carry memory. May you find the courage to look at what you've been shown. May you forgive yourself for what you remember, both the harm you suffered and the harm you caused. May you release what is complete and integrate what still teaches. May you walk lightly in this life, even as you carry the weight of others. May you find community, souls who understand, who witness, who hold space. And may you remember this above all. For you chose this. Before you were born, your soul said yes to carrying this memory. Because it knew you were strong enough, brave enough, loving enough. And it was right. You are not your past. You are the eternal consciousness, learning through it. And you are free. You always have been. Welcome home, old soul.